Donald Trump playing his part as our bully-in-chief, seemingly on a warpath this afternoon. But his post-Mueller enemies list goes beyond the media. His scorched earth governing style is now affecting a much broader group. Take a look at these headlines. For starters, despite opposition from Republicans in Congress, even reportedly two of his own cabinet members, the administration is pressing forward with a new plan to completely invalidate the Affordable Care Act, a move that could take health insurance away from 21 million people. As if that weren't enough, Trump now also complaining about how much federal aid Puerto Rico is receiving in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria. And finally, his administration is proposing eliminating all $18 million in federal funding for the Special Olympics. This is real, folks. This is something Betsy DeVos was grilled about on Capitol Hill yesterday.
You have zeroed out Special Olympics once again. I still can't understand why you would go after disabled children in your budget. You zero that out. It's appalling.
Do you know how many kids are going to be affected by that cut, Madam Secretary?
Mr. Pocan, let me just say again, we had to make some difficult decisions with this budget.
Again, this is a question on how many kids, not about the budget.
I don't know the number of kids.
It's 272,000 kids. That's all. I'll answer it for you. That's okay. No problem. It's 272,000 kids that are affected.
Is an awesome organization, one that is well supported by the philanthropic sector as well.
Sure.
Joining our conversation, because we need him on a day like today, David Jolly, new papa, former Republican congressman of Florida, now an independent, and Karine Jean-Pierre, because we always need her, senior advisor to MoveOn.org, both MSNBC contributors. I've got to start with you, David Jolly. Just go.
Nicole, it's a remarkable level of stupid. I mean, there's no other way to describe what we're seeing. So it's Donald Trump's 2020 campaign that, hey, I'm going to take away your health care and I'm going to defund Special Olympics. But Bob Mueller vindicated me because we can look back at just last November and realize that policy matters to voters. You know, one of the things you see in this annual budget process often is administrations will submit cuts that they know may not get enacted. And it's a way to try to move the numbers, try to balance the budget. But this is not a president who has talked about balancing the budget. This is not a move of conviction or even a political strategy. And so, you know, you find yourself asking questions when you see cuts of only $18 million to Special Olympics in federal numbers. That's not even a rounding error. I think, as Philip Bump, a friend of your show, has said, that's 5 trips to Mar-a-Lago. Do they intentionally start these fights? Or is it truly just such a new level of stupid that we should be asking what university did their parents bribe to get them in?
I mean, look, it's a fair point, Karine, yeah. and it's this almost operationalized cruelty, because it's either stupid or cruel, and I'm not sure which is worse.
I think it's both. I think it's unspeakable cruelty at some insane level, and that is one thing that this administration is going to be known for, whether it's big or small, the level of cruelty that they put forth with policy, with the way he tweets and the things that he does as president, debasing the office that he holds. And the thing about budgets is that budget priorities are, yes, they're priorities, but they're also moral documents, and they're showing their morals right now. So there's enough money to build a wall, but not enough money for Special Olympics. There's enough money to give tax cuts to billionaires, but not enough money for Special Olympics. I mean, it is a level of cruelty that's just beyond the pale. And
on health care, Barrett, don't we have a Chief Justice of the Supreme Court who's now weighed in twice? I mean, aren't they running into a brick wall of John Roberts, who, if this lands in the Supreme Court, they're going to lose?
Yeah, I mean, the Supreme Court really is sort of the backstop of all of this, and they've tried it and they failed, and it's going to work its way back up the courts again. So I'm not exactly sure what the motivation here is, because it seems like they're just playing an unwinnable game.
It reminds me of the cereal commercial, like, oh, Mikey likes it, Mikey will eat it. It's like Mick Mulvaney was like, oh, Trump will do it, this stupid death wish on health care that John Roberts will stop in the Supreme Court. I mean, there's no chance, it would seem, politically in Congress or legally to do what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and if you don't have something that's both legal and politically feasible, I'm not sure what the motivation is for doing it then. But look, we've seen this time and time again throughout this administration that the courts have been called in to really be sort of the final backstop and to say, look, you guys can try all sorts of, novel things here, but at the end of the day, we have these laws, we have institutions, they've tried this before. I don't think this is going to be successful.
And the politics are just as bleak as the legal forecast on healthcare.
I mean, I think a lot of Republicans on Capitol Hill were seriously hitting their head against the wall. This is not what they want to be talking about. They just went through the 2018 election where Trump and Republicans said, you know what, we're going to win on tax cuts. They clearly didn't matter. And everything turned again.
And the caravan.
And the caravan, right? Those were going to be the two things that were going to be the salvation for the Republicans. And they do not have any plan for replacement. It failed 2 years ago, right after Trump won in 2016, and they are nowhere near any kind of solution there.
But the person who has a plan to fight about health care for 2 years against Donald Trump and his sycophants in Congress is Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
And Nancy Pelosi's been doing this for a very long time. She knows how to legislate. She's a student of public policy. She knows how to move things through the Congress. None of those things have been strong, facets of how the Trump White House has rolled. The other thing I was thinking when David was talking about what's behind them doing this stuff, you can't leave Puerto Rico out of the mix on this. They're cutting food stamps and federal support.
There's an IG report into whether or not they slowed aid to the island all along.
Well, I've been on two
IG investigation. Sorry, no.
I've been on 2 reporting trips to Puerto Rico since the hurricane, and when you go there, San Juan is okay. Electricity's back, water's flowing. You go into the interior, and it's still devastated. There's families in there who are in incredible distress. They don't have roofs on their homes. They don't have electricity. They don't have running water, and they're Americans. Puerto Rico is not a foreign country. That is an island populated by Americans in distress, and I can only assess that Trump and his administration is doing this out of pique. They don't like the backlash they got over his ineffective response to the hurricane when it happened. And so he's continuing to sort of, get a pound of flesh around this. And I wonder if that plays into the Special Olympics. This is a program that
What did they do to him?
Well, the Kennedys started the Special Olympics.
Oh my God!
I think I don't know.
My brain doesn't go that
but
dark. David, I need you to jump in here, not just on the politics of cruelty, but on the dangers of a president who turns out to be exactly what Hillary Clinton warned us he would be, someone who could be baited by a tweet.
Baited by a tweet, and somebody that in the long lens of history might destroy once and for all the brand of a once noble political party. And what I mean by that is if you take a step back, all these things we're talking about, Special Olympics, Puerto Rico, and so forth.
And can you just stop for a minute? Can you believe those are the 3 things we're talking about? So here are the 3 things we're talking about. Donald Trump trying to destroy the Special Olympics, health care for all, and aid to Puerto Rico. Those things weren't even debated. Health care was debated, but there weren't big debates around aid for disaster relief in the good old days. There were not debates around special. It's remarkable.
But consider how this translates, honestly, to the very simple messaging that most voters will use to determine which party they are going to support. In the case of health care, Democrats have a plan. Republicans say, we don't like a health care plan. Special Olympics, Democrats are for it. Republicans are now against it. Even the Green New Deal conversation, while a lot of Republicans have trouble with it, Donald Trump supposedly said to senators, keep it around long enough so I can run against it. Democrats are for an environmental plan to deal with climate science and climate change, and Republicans are against it. And at the end of the day, in this very busy week, Nicole, look at the message that's on the streets now about the next election. Republicans are saying we need to investigate Hillary Clinton. We're going back to investigating Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and Bob Mueller now because of whatever the hijinks are. And Democrats are saying, let's move forward on policy. It is a vast difference between the two parties. And that's why in a tough week for Democrats, I think they have a lot to be optimistic about 20 months from now.
So I got to give you the last word.
Yeah, so just want to go back to Puerto Rico for a second. I went to Puerto Rico very recently in January, and it is very much a devastation when you leave San Juan and people tell you they can't find a doctor, they can't rebuild their home, and it's incredibly inhumane. We have to remember that more people died in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria, from Hurricane Maria and the aftermath, than people died on September 11th. Like, we have to think about that. And that is what we're dealing with. It was a disaster of epic proportion. And what the administration is doing is truly inhumane. And with health care, so now the president is saying in an election year, he's going to take health care away from 20 million people. We're talking about poor people, senior citizens, people who truly need health care. And it's just, maybe it's because he's looking for a foil, right? He loves to have a fight. There's too much
Sick
good news.
people, disabled children.
Right? And he wants to have a fight, but it's really, really just unbelievable.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.